Greetings, everyone, and welcome to week number 3 of the Blender 102 class, where we are tackling the process of character modeling. Now, this is kind of an introductory style character. I mean, it's certainly not super ultra mega high res by any means. The geometry is fairly simple. As a matter of fact, the geometry in this version of the model, the Thursday version, is in a few ways a bit simpler than that of the Tuesday model. The good news is, though, on this one, I don't really need to redo the hip and the groin area, which I am going to end up redoing on the other one. But no, that's just kind of how modeling goes sometimes. You know, you're working, and sometimes you just have to say, you know what, this needs to go away, and I need to do it in a different way. So, that's how it's going to work. Anyway, tonight, what we're going to be taking a look at is the hand and the arm area for our character. Now, just as a curiosity, because, you know, I like to get you guys involved to, you know, talk every now and then. How many of you out there have ever modeled a character? Anybody? Anyone? Anyone? So a couple of people. If you say not me, then don't answer. I just want to know who has. Okay, there's really just a few of you, and that's totally cool. How many of you out there have a difficult time or are terrified of the concept of modeling hands? So, if hands are difficult for you, or if you're afraid of hands, hopefully tonight's class is going to help you out with some things. That's my ultimate goal for the evening, is to take care of that. So, here's kind of how I want everybody to begin. What I'm going to do tonight is I am just going to jump right in and begin modeling. And if we get done early, that's cool. If we get done a little late, that's cool too. We'll just kind of see where things go. Because a lot of the speed of these modeling classes really depends on how people keep up or how many questions are asked. It's one of those, you know, interactivity things. So, I have my object selected. I am in edit mode. So I'm going to insert a new mesh. Let me right click right here and put my 3D cursor. I'm going to put it right in the middle of the palm, just for the fun of it. And I'll rotate around to the side view, and I'm going to put away my smooth version, because I don't really need it. And let's see here. There's my 3D cursor. Let me play with this real quick. There's my N key to bring up a little slider. Take my 3D cursor, and I'm going to slide it in the y-axis, so it's pretty much right above the palm. I mean, it doesn't need to be exact, just somewhere right there in that general area. It will make things a lot easier. Then, let's go to Add, and add in a plane. Aha! I could have clicked, moving the cursor is viewport sensitive. I know, I just, you know, it's one of those things where you just go back and forth. Okay, so let's rotate around. I want to rotate this guy vertically, so you know, your mileage may vary on how you want to rotate it, but I'm going to rotate here around the x-axis. And, you know, this is why I hate these types of views. So let me switch over to a nice perspective view. And I want to rotate this pretty much vertically. It doesn't have to be perfectly vertical. That's a beautiful thing. So like this one, it's got a little bit of a slant. You know what? So what? Who cares? Let's go back over to the front view, not the camera view. Now, a couple of things. What we're going to do is line this up with the palm as best we can with only 4 vertices. So let's rotate it a little bit. Let's scale it down. That's cool. And I'll immediately switch over to vertices. And I'm just going to drag these out to about the corners of the palm. Like so. Now, there is a reason that I'm building the hand first, and I'm not going about the process of building the arm. It's because, in my experience, you don't always know exactly how many edges, you're going to have around your armhole. I believe I've got 11. I have 11. So, if you try to go ahead and build an arm all the way out, when you get done with, if you try to build a hand off that, you might find you have to add a lot of edges up the body. What I will do is I'll build a hand generally, figure out how many edges I need to make those two things connect, and then just work from there. If I think I can do basically a straight connection and just go from 11 edges down to 11 edges or 12 edges to 12 edges, then that's what I'll do. But if I have a whole lot in one area and few in another, then I may try to see if I can terminate some off halfway down the arm or something like that. I just feel better about making these connections if I build the hand separately and just don't worry about such things. Now, incidentally, if the character's geometry is kind of getting in your way, you can just select all of that. Now, I just did that by tapping B, of course, and dragging out a marquee selection. And just tap H, and that will hide that from view. Now, it's still going to be available when you have your smooth modifier up, or when you're stuck here in edit mode. I'm sorry. It's because of our mirror. It's still going to be there. But I'm going to turn mine off. You can leave yours on if you want to. The reason I'm turning mine off is I have noticed some people complain that having it open as we continue modeling may start slowing down the response in the webinar. So that's really the only reason I'm hiding it. Okay, so we need to add some detail. This obviously a plane is not going to do the entire trick. So can anybody tell me off the top of their head, guys, is the password should be up over in the calendar, is it not? Okay, it is up in the calendar. Okay, good. So I'm not crazy. That makes me very happy. All right, we need to add some edges to this palm to get it shaped out for the number of fingers we have. First cookie question of the night. How many edges do we need to add in order to bring out our fingers? Take a guess. Throw a rock at it. See what you hit. 3. SJMCC gets it. It's a lot of letters. I wish we had something we pronounce. Streeter says 28. Way to go. I don't think I would add that many, but we could try it. So I'm going to add 3 edges, and really what that is 1 edge for each of the gaps between our fingers. At the end of the day, this will end up giving us 1 face for each finger. It's a very nice way to go about making a hand. So you see that I'm pulling these vertices right out to the gap where each finger ends, like so. So we have 4 edges that are going to make up where the fingers go. You see 1, 2, 3, and 4. Perfect. Now we can also do an edge in this direction and use this to kind of help us line up where the thumb's going to be as well as the curvature of the palm. So let me switch back over to vertices. I'm going to put this right at the base of where the thumb begins. It's right there at the beginning of that fleshy area of skin that connects the thumb. And I'll pull this vertex out just a little bit. Now while you're here, you might as well take these rear vertices and just adjust them a little bit, though that's not going to be too important. We're going to clean up a lot of this area once we go about making the actual hand itself. I also think it's a good idea to double check the side view. One thing we can do here is grab all of our verts and just kind of slide them forward so that they rest pretty much right on top of the hand. But outside of that, I wouldn't worry too terribly much about detail, aside from maybe grabbing this central edge. And we can slide that forward slightly just to give us a little bit of curvature. All right, now let's take this very boring shape and let's turn it into the box for our hand. So let's grab all of our faces, like so. And I'll jump over to the side view. We're just going to extrude these to the thickness of the palm. So tap E, slide forward, and right about there should do. And there you go. We have a pretty nice start for a hand. Now there are some things that we need to keep in mind about the shape of hands, about kind of how they work. One is there's a lot of curvature to hands that goes unnoticed. At least I feel like it does when people are just getting started. We've already seen some of it. We've got like this curvature here at the shape of the palm where the fingers meet. We also have some curvature with the shape of the palm in this direction as well. And here's what I mean. Let me unselect everything. I'm going to grab these 2 faces, and if you can't tell which ones those were, they're the 2 faces at the back of the hand, kind of like where the pinky's attaching all the way back to the wrist. I'm going to hit G. Actually, let me right-click and cancel it. Let me turn on proportional editing first. I'm going to hit G. And I want to slide these forward, so let me select just the y-axis and then roll down on my radius just to kind of pull this forward a little bit. Now you can double check against your side view to see how far that needs to go. So about like so. And so you're just kind of creating some curvature in the overall shape of the palm. Now, there's some more as well as you get into the shape of the knuckles, and then we can switch over to vertices to make this happen. So if I take this vertex, and let me turn off proportional editing for just a minute. So you take this vertex, and I'll just slide it forward a little bit. You'll notice my movements are not always very precise. That has more to do with the way I model than anything else. This one in between the ring finger and the pinky will pull down a little bit, and this one at the pinky will pull down just a little bit farther. So something about like so. I'll go ahead and show that in perspective so everybody can see it. Now I want to give my first ready check of the evening just to see kind of where people are. So I'll pause the video and let those of you who are following along, please make sure you check your participate button if you are doing so. I'll let those of you who are following along tell me when you get done. Alright, moving along. Our next step is going to be to get the shape of the fingers in place, but generally before I do that, now I'll give you guys sort of a tip. This is sort of my very general go-to recipe for making a polygon hand. Even if I need something that is higher definition than this, I will often start using this recipe and then accentuate it as need be. So if you pay attention to this part of the class, you're going to know pretty much how I model hands. Okay, so next, let's hit Control R, and I'm going to add an edge all the way around the palm itself. Now, these faces back here, we really don't need them. Let's go ahead and just turn that into a great big hole right now. So I'll select all those faces, hit X, and just delete those out. Because in the end, those will end up being attached to the arm anyway. Now, I want to switch to the front view, open up X-ray for just a minute. If we take a look here, we can see kind of all those faces, but a hand, if you were to chop all the fingers off, and it's a horrible thought, I know, but if you take a look at the flesh between your fingers, it has kind of a backwards slant to it. So we're going to go ahead and create that early on by taking these vertices and sort of sliding them back. Like so. I also want to use this new edge we've created to round out the palm a little bit, and that's going to be a little bit of a trade-off type of action, where we can take this central edge we've just created and we can pull it out slightly. I wouldn't pull it too far, because as you might recall, it was already lined up pretty well with our drawing, but just a little bit. Then take the other edges and push them back in a little. Like so. Now, I do think this is a good time to sort of double check your face thicknesses. So take a look at how wide the two faces here are going to be to pull out an index finger. Same with the middle finger and the ring finger and the pinky finger, because some of you, depending on how you've been moving your verts, may have something that looks kind of like this, where you got this tiny, tiny little space for a finger and one other finger is really wide. Don't do that. Take a moment and go ahead and, you don't necessarily need to even them out. Obviously, the pinky finger really is going to be smaller. But you can make those relationships now, and you won't have to do as much tweaking to the hand later. So do it now with fewer vertices, basically. Okay. And now I turn on turntable rotation. If you don't like working with turntable, if you prefer the sort of trackball method, that's totally fine by me. I've been using turntable for way too many years, and I found that I could get the hang of trackball. It just wasn't really my cup of tea. So, one of those things. Okay, so let's make a finger, shall we? Here's how we're going to do it. Go to Faces and grab these two faces where the index finger's coming out. If for some reason you've become lost along the way, you can kind of see here which faces those are. Tap the E key to extrude, And I wouldn't even extrude these very far. My first extrusion on a finger, I usually only go out just by a little bit. Now, pop quiz time. So who gets a super cookie for our first super cookie of the evening? I want to do a two-sphere operation. What's the hotkey combination? Dun 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 dun. Can nobody get this? No. If somebody's looking it up on Google right now, I can feel it. Control Shift O. Control Shift O. Huh. That looks like it's opening recent. That looks like it fails. Control Shift S. That's not working. I'm giving you guys hints. All right, looks like nobody's got it. It's Alt Shift S. No, it's just Alt Shift S. I like running this on fingers. It just gives you a nice sort of cleaned up shape for the rounding out process. And then you can take the entire group and just sort of scale it down a little bit. Grab this lower edge, maybe drag it forward, because across the bottom of the palm, you don't really want too terribly much of an indentation as you start to flow to the finger. Yes, you do have it on trackball, so you can rotate it dead parallel. That is one of the advantages of using the trackball method, is you can do that. And that's one of the reasons why people swear by it. Okay, so next, let's grab those faces again. Boom, boom. Let's go back over to the front view, and let's hit extrude again. I'm just going to pull this out to about where the tip of the finger is going to be, or at least, as far as it's going to go. Now, some folks don't like to do that. Let me hit undo real quick. Some folks will instead just extrude and then immediately right-click and just tap G and move that exactly where they want to go. I don't care which one you do. Either one is just fine with me. When you're done, though, make sure you can see through. I would take these two faces, and at least from this view, rotate them so that they're kind of perpendicular to the tip of the finger. When you have that, check the side view. Because it looks to me like we need to take this and slide it forward a little bit, and probably scale it in slightly, just in Y. So we're going to kind of crush it down to get a little tapering for the finger. Okay, so let's do another ready check to see who's made it to this point. Continue. Okay, so everybody's got that. Let's go back to our front view. I'm going to scale things down in this view a little bit as well, which I might as well just do a uniform scale. I'll probably have to pull back out over in the side view, which is fine. I'll just back that out just a little bit more. Okay, now, we need to shape our finger, obviously, and here's my method that I generally use for doing that. Let's hit Control R. Within your finger, so once you get past the main knuckle that comes off your palm, there are two more knuckles. So we're going to add two more edges, one for each knuckle. So it's Control R, and then just roll your mouse wheel up just a little bit to add a couple of edges. I'm going to switch over to edges, grab just this one edge, and Alt-click it so I get the entire loop. And then I can just place this essentially right where I need that knuckle to be, and then do the same over here. So that's pretty easy. Now if you want to check the side view at this stage, you can. You might have to look closely to see kind of where the drawing goes. But I would just grab the edges on the top of the knuckle. Because it looks like everything is lining up, at least in my case. With the drawing pretty well, it's just the tops of the knuckles are maybe a little bit off. So we could take this one and sort of drag it inward a little bit. Take the next one back. Drag that in just a little bit as well, and it just creates a little bit of general taper. Maybe grab this edge and wiggle it slightly so the finger is slightly crooked, but a lot of fingers are. They have just a little bit of crookedness to them. And most of the time, if you do that, your finger will look a lot more natural. Okay, so now with that done, we're going to shape the fingers a little bit further by adding some detail to these knuckles. There are a couple of different ways to go about that. Oh, there's a ton of ways to go about this, so here are just kind of some of my favorites. You can either add an edge loop around either side of these knuckle edges. Oh, and before I even do that, let me clean these up. I didn't even think about that. Rotate around these and just see how much slanting you're getting, because really these need to be relatively straight. So I'm going to pull this guy forward a little bit, grab this guy, and just pull him down the length of the finger a little bit. You'll notice, again, I'm not doing a lot of precision moves here. With organic modeling, I often don't. I find that the little tiny happy accidents of my hand wiggling around will make my models look pretty good. As long as your topology is generally clean, those little teensy tiny variations can really make all the difference. Okay, so let's hit Control R and we'll add one loop on either side of this first knuckle. Now we don't have a lot of data for what this looks like in either one of our views, so we kind of have to infer some things. And that's fine, we're artists, that's what we do. So the finger is going to tend to get a tiny little bit wider at the knuckles. So on each side of the finger, we're going to pull this out very slightly. Subtlety is key. Don't just do that. Keep it very, very subtle. At the top of the knuckle, do the same thing. Just pull that out away from the finger just a little bit. Now, for the edges on either side, what I like to do is pull those away. Like so. So you see when viewed from the side, my edges kind of start to separate around the knuckle. On the underside, let's grab this central edge right at the middle of the finger, or middle of the knuckle, excuse me. Let's scale that in just slightly, and then I'll move it up, actually into the finger, to help us get that little indentation between the knuckles. Then take the edges on either side and just pull them closer to that edge. So you're just kind of tightening up that crease just a little bit. And if you take a look at the smooth version, you can see what that's done. And let me go ahead and do this. Let's jump out of here. I'm going to click smooth so I see a smooth result. And you can see what that's doing. Okay, let's do another quick ready check for people to get to this point. Okay, so that's pretty much the definition for our first knuckle. Let's go ahead and do the same thing over here, but I'm going to do a different method this time. This time, I'm going to grab this edge, goes around the knuckle, hit W, and bevel it. I'm going to pull the percentage of my bevel back a little ways, then just immediately hit Control R and add an edge right in the middle. Because we don't yet have the option in bevel to add an extra edge. I really kind of want that like yesterday. Now, same thing. Start with those vertices, excuse me, on either side of the knuckle, and just do a little bit of widening. You know, if you want to, feel free to look at your own finger and see if maybe you have one knuckle kind of protrudes or doesn't protrude. You know, by all means, you've got a lot of reference right at the end of your wrist. So you might as well put it to good use. Pull this out. Slide these away slightly. Not as pronounced as we were on the first knuckle. It's a smaller knuckle, so. Scale in, push up into the finger, slide forward, slide forward. And there you have it. Okay, one more quick ready check for people to grab that. Okay, so next thing, I'd like to add a little more detail to the middle segments in between the knuckles. And of course, the easy way to do that is to just add a single edge in between each one. Now I would start, if we take a look in the front view here, and let me hide out this guy. I would start off by just kind of centering this edge up on the finger. Now it's not always the case, but depending on the type of character you're making, this will often be kind of sucked in a little bit, like you'll scale in slightly. I'm also noticing though that we've got some vertices out here that I feel like need to be kind of pulled in. Let me grab that one as well. So we'll just go ahead and line these up a little more closely with the hand. And these are all looking okay. Pull that back out a little bit. And let's just double check the smooth. It's looking alright. Let's see, maybe grab these guys and tug them very slightly. We can make the smooth line up a little bit more with the drawing in this case because we're not going to be adding too terribly much more detail. We can add one edge in the middle of this segment and see what that does, though I would probably end up sliding it back a little bit so we don't lose too much of the rounding at the tip of the finger. Now again, we have one of those situations where we have to infer a few things. So let's hide this for just a moment. We can see where the tip of the finger is, but if we look at that really closely, there's kind of some curvature and an upward sweep as we go toward where the fingernail comes in. Probably true on your hand as well. So let's see about kind of putting that into place. And I would do that. Let me turn on smooth for just a moment so we can kind of see what this looks like. I would do that by jumping over to my vertices, take these topmost verts and sort of pull them forward. The next row back, this part of the row we just added, I would actually push those down into the finger just a little bit. Grab this central edge and let me pull that up slightly. And then right here on the underside of the fingertip, just slide these back. And you start to get a much nicer overall feel for your fingertip. You can also play with scaling those in slightly. And just see if you like the rounding doing that a little better. Then in this direction, I'm going to grab these two vertices we just recently added up here. I'll push these down into the finger as well. Actually, on the underside of the finger, we can pull them down very slightly, just to add a little bit more flesh to the underside of the index. Now, we haven't added a central edge here, and I like to have them, so we'll go ahead and put one in. I'm going to scale it down just a hair. Really, that's just to knock it out of truly straight, more than anything else. Grab the two verts on the top, push those in slightly. Grab the two on the bottom, pull those down slightly. And there we go. We've got a finger. There's a couple of other little things, though, that will make this look much nicer. And that is, if we take a look at faces. This face, let's see here. This face to a certain degree, and this one, and this one, and this one, and this one, all have something in common. They're on the top of the finger and in between the knuckles. If we thin these out, we'll get a little bit more of a natural shape to the finger, which in most cases, if you were to take a cross-section of your finger, is going to be wider and flatter on the bottom than it is on top. So let me switch back over to vertices. And what I'm going to do is just push these in down the length of the finger, so kind of squeeze them together. Now, of course, if you want to, another way to go about this, which can be faster, it's just a question of what you prefer, is to grab edges and just scale in those edges. Whoa, but just be careful about how you do it, right? Wrong edge. I want you. There we are. Now, let's get out of edit mode for just a minute. We can take a look at the smooth version. And I think that's really coming along. So let's do another ready check for folks to get to here. Okay, so everybody's got a finger, which is great. Now, we need more fingers. You know, I, for one, really don't want to go through that entire mess every single time we need a finger. Because if you take a look at your fingers right now, take your hand, open it up, and take a look at all the digits coming off the palm. They all basically are clones of one another. more or less. They all do exactly the same thing. So if we follow the same mentality, it's a lot faster to build fingers. If we just grab these two faces here at the fingertip, let's hit Control plus, and I'm going to go up to here. We could go all the way up, like so, but I'm not going to do that. I just want to go up to like one face shy of where I want to be. Let's go back to the front view. Now hit Shift D and duplicate that finger. And then you can just move it and rotate it into position. Now just generally get it where it needs to be. It does not need to be perfect. Your next task is going to be to get it attached, and that's a two-part thing. First off, we need to delete the faces that are already there. So take the two faces that define where the middle finger goes, and just hit X and choose Delete Faces. Next, switch over to Edges, and just go edge by edge. We'll take this top edge, and the top edge over here, hit F. Edge, edge, hit F. In fact, let me hide out my smooth, make that maybe a little bit easier to visualize. Edge, edge, F. If you start getting some overlappage in between your faces here, I wouldn't stress it right away, but we can unravel that just by moving some vertices. So edge, edge, hit F, and F, and F. Nice and neat. Now if you wanted to unravel that sort of overlay, where so we have some crumpling of the geometry here, you know, I'll be honest, in some cases when you're doing turbo smooth modeling or subdivision surface modeling or using these smooth modifiers, sometimes that little bit of crumpling can help you get nice looking creases. So don't always think that you need to get rid of it. And even in some game models where you're not even smoothing, sometimes it can just plain look nice. But if you need to get rid of it, it's usually just a matter of moving around some verts, like so. I'm going to kind of straighten up these vertices here in between the finger and start to pull these down a bit toward the base of the palm. I could take this vertex and snake it up just a little bit, sort of thin out that webbing in between the fingers. Now if you wanted to do some higher resolution modeling, you could get another edge in there and use that to really crease out that webbing, but we're not going to go that high res. Okay, so we've got our other finger. It is attached. Let's hide out our smooth for just a moment. Go back over to the front view. Actually, let me do a rapid ready check just to see who got that attached and if anybody needs help. Okay, so we've got our finger attached. Let's jump over to the front view. Take a look over here. Obviously, we need to get this positioned just a little more cleanly. And here's how I like to do this sort of thing. Grab the two faces at the front of the finger. So 1, 2. Go back over to the front view. Set your proportional editing to connected, and then hit G. The cool thing about that is, as you increase your radius, notice it's not influencing the other finger, because it's only reaching for those edges that are actually connected to what you have selected, and that's very, very convenient. So we can pull that out, we can go into wireframe view and turn on smooth, and we can zoom in just a little bit and get that close. It looks pretty good. Doesn't need to be super duper ultra mega dead on. Now, over here, if I hit Alt, I don't want to be in faces. Let's go to edges and just grab this edge loop right down the center of the knuckle. I can do the same thing here. I can move this and lower the radius a bit, and I can position exactly where I want that knuckle to be. Also have the power to scale it a bit, and the whole knuckle comes along, which is really nice when you think about it. So let's do the same thing here. We'll just kind of move this. It's right about here. Scale up slightly. There we go. And it looks like we have some cleaning to do over here. So let's pull this over. Probably pull this back. Now, if we check out the side view, we're probably not going to have a whole lot of information here. I'm not expecting much. Aside from the fact that this finger is rotated a little bit off of true, because you'll notice it's a little slanted on the palm. Now, of course, that's easy to fix. Grab all of your face, well, just your two faces at the front, and then I would just Control plus until we get back to the base of the finger. Then we can aim right down the finger, rotate that around. Let me get rid of proportional editing, so double tap O. Rotate that around so it's more in tune with where the finger is placed there. Jump over to the side view, and that's going to need to come forward. So that's what we'll do. We'll just hit G and slide that up a bit. It also looks like there may be some tilt to it in this direction, so we could just rotate it slightly, pull it forward. Now, at this stage of the game, my next trick would be to kind of clean up the vertices around the attachment point. So let me switch back over to verts. These need to be kept pretty snug up toward the knuckle, so we'll do that. Kind of help maintain the creasing there at where the fingers begin. I'm going to straighten out this edge. That probably means I need to straighten it out on this finger as well. And we'll straighten it out over here. So a little bit of tweaking. All right. Looking pretty good. And let's check out our smooth and just go into object mode. Not bad, not bad at all. And let's do another ready check for folks to get up to this stage. All right, so 2 fingers. Of course, we need a couple more. Now, the ring finger is really about the same in size and proportion, in most cases, to the index finger. So I'm just going to copy that a second time. Let's go over to faces. Can you guys still hear me over in BuzzNet? Is everything good? Okay, good. Just making sure. Quiet group. All right, so here's our next finger. Let's go back over to the front view. Let's get lined up, and then again hit Shift D, move this over, and same story, just rotate it. Maybe get away with a little bit of scaling, not too much. I'm not going to scale it, but I will, however, take a look before it even gets attached. Let's take a look in the side view. We're going to slide this forward a bit to line up a little better. We can go ahead and rotate it slightly in this view as well. Something about like so. And let's aim right down it, and we can rotate it in this direction as well to kind of get it to line up with its faces on the palm. I think that's pretty good. Let's go ahead and hide out the smooth for a moment. And let me go back to a perspective view. Let's get this attached into place. So face, face, X, delete faces. Goodbye. Let's go back to edges, edge, edge. Well, I don't want to do it that way. No, we can do it that way. Sorry, crazy. Just hit F, and then edge, edge, F, edge, edge, F, and repeat all the way around the finger. Okay. Now, same as before, we have some cleanup to do. Let me go to vertices to do that. So clean this up. We could do a little bit of untangling here in this area. Do I have a hole there? It looks like I have a hole there. We have a hole in the geometry. Oh, that's crazy. That face looks good, the other face does not. So, when I find stuff like this happen, here's what I generally do. Let's grab the entire finger all the way up to here. And then I'm just going to move it on a single axis, because if you do that, it's easy to move it back. So just slide that down. That'll work. And that allows us to get a clearer idea of what happened here. So, yes, this face is flipped around, and the reason for that probably has to do with surface normals, but it may not. Let me go ahead and just hit X and delete out the face, and just see what happens if I try to add it back in. U and U. Hit F, and that seemed to work. Could have been something I had selected. Not a bad idea to grab the entire piece of geometry, and then just hit Control J to point the normals outward. In any event, we can now switch back over to faces, grab these two faces, go all the way back up to the base here. Let's double check in the front view, G, and slide right back up into position. And there we go. So most of that came untangled. What I was just doing right there, the reason my 3D cursor jumped, for a minute my brain told me I was in Maya, and I was going to bring up the marking menu to allow me to select vertices. Ta-da! So let's get a little bit of separation between these guys. Let's find a little vertex hiding right in here, and we'll just pull that out, clean that up a little bit, and pull these down a hair for that membrane at the base of the fingers. Alright, now, just cleaning up. This finger is a bit thinner than our index finger. Let's go back to using connected on proportional editing, and I think that'll speed things up pretty dramatically. Streeter, what's up? You were jamming a second ago and now you're suddenly gone. What happened? Alright, so there's that. Go ahead and turn off proportional editing, drag that out slightly, and there we go. And we have a third finger. Now, I'm going to start cleaning a few things up. It looks like where we attach these, we need some more attention at the knuckle here. So let me get a little more of a smooth transition between the knuckles here, from the palm out to the first knuckle on the finger. And let's do a really quick ready check for people to catch up to this point. So here we are, last finger. Now this one's pretty easy. Let's switch over to faces. And let's expand that all the way out. So last time, this time we can go a little bit quicker, I think. Shift-D, move, rotate, looks good. Do a little bit of scaling on this one. I mean, your pinky really is just a smaller finger in general, so you can go ahead and scale it down. Why not? And let's move that a little bit, so about like so. Looks pretty good. A little bit of rotate back. And that's a good enough start. We can do some proportional editing to get it a little more cleaned up as we go. Let me check something real fast. I would like to grab this loop of edges here, and I want to scale these up, but I want to do it with connected on. So let's turn that on. Let's hit S and scale that up, like so, and I'll move it just a little bit, and I'll scale it up a little bit more. And there we go. I like that. So we kind of scaled down the tip of the finger when all was said and done, and not the rest of the finger. Now we have some other things we want to do here as well. Let's jump back over to the faces and grab all of the faces here. Let's aim right down the thing, and I'll adjust my rotation very slightly. Let's check out the side view. We don't really have a whole lot of information to go on here, but we can probably sort of infer that this would rotate forward a little more, just very slightly, and maybe slide forward just a little bit. And I think that's looking pretty good. And we'll grab faces here and hit X and delete out faces, like so. Okay, so let's switch over to edges and go edge, edge, and hit F. And edge, and edge, and hit F. And edge, edge, not those edges, here, and hit F. And here, and hit F. And here, and hit F. So there we go. Just do your standard attachment. And now obviously we got a little bit of cleanup to do here to make all of this into a smoother transition. So let me jump over to vertices and we'll take a look in perspective view because it makes it a little more apparent what's going on. So we can pull this. Ooh, turn off proportional editing. So, whoa, thank you. So let's tap O, hit G, pull that down, and then I'm going to do a little bit of vertex cleanup sort of across the board down this finger. May end up doing that to the rest of the fingers as well. I kind of like that swoop downward through the meaty parts of the finger, so the segments in between the knuckles. Kind of pull those down a little bit. And if you're stopping and think, well, why didn't you do this beforehand? Well, truth, I didn't think of it. But it does also kind of force me to look at the vertices of each finger, which is kind of a nice way to double check, see if there's anything else I needed to fix, change, or anything like that. And pull down, pull down. All right. So there we go. We have 4 fingers, and let's take a look at our smooth version and go back to object mode. Little bit of creasing there in between the pinky and the ring finger, which is not necessarily a problem, but it would warrant me just checking that out, and we can see here kind of why. We have some faces that are sort of crumpled up a little bit, so just kind of straighten those out. And that really cleaned that up quite nicely. Now the last thing I want to do here for the hand, or at least this part of the hand, is create some knuckles up on top. Now there's a bunch of different ways to go about this, and a lot of it really just depends on how you want the hand to look. If you really want to see those bones running all the way back the hand, of course you just extend these extrusions I'm about to make. But let's start off here in the front view. And what I want you to do is, let me hide my smooth. Let's add one more edge right around the front of the palm, right before the fingers start to branch out. Now, before we start even worrying about the knuckles, I would take that edge and do something with it. So grab all of the vertices on the underside of the hand, pull those out a little. It just adds a little bit of fleshiness to the palm, which will be nice. After the thumb is attached, we can take these vertices, because really, this is where the thumb's going to be coming into play. But we can take these vertices and slide them back across the back of the hand a little bit, which gives us a little bit of room to extend these back slightly as well. I'm going to clean up some of these edges on the side of the hand. Now, let's switch back over to faces. Actually, before I even do that, I'm going to do just a little bit of base tweaking on the fingers. I'm going to straighten that out a little bit. Straighten that out. Those are looking okay for the most part. Yeah, I think that'll work. Okay, back over to faces. Grab these 2 faces, and we're going to do an extrusion, just a tiny little one, just out to about here, and then scale that down, like so. You can also, if you feel like it, you can do Alt-Shift-S and to sphere that, just kind of round things out. But this is going to be the lump of your knuckle. So really, your big thing you want to do is make sure that that central edge is kind of the highest point. You want that to become the peak, if it's not already. I like to see it kind of taper as it goes back. Let's pull it in from here. And then, of course, double check and see what it looks like when smoothed. There you go, just a nice little additional bump right before you get to the hand. Okay, let's do another quick ready check for people to catch up to this point. Alright, so next I'm just going to do that with the remainder of the knuckles. So real quick, let's Control-Tab F for faces, grab this face, extrude out a little bit, scale in. I mean, you can do an inset if you want to use some of the newer tools. There's no reason not to. I just, I think this is just as good. Taper inward. Grab these guys and kind of pull them up a little bit. You can also take the one in between the knuckles and pull them down. It just gives you a little more variation in the shape of the hand at this point, which is kind of nice. Sharpen her knuckle just a little bit. Go ahead and pull these back a little farther. Pull this up slightly. Okay, next face. Extrude just a little bit. Scale. Streeter, are you still here? I'll take that as a no. As when one of my more active students suddenly disappears, I tend to notice. So if you want to be noticed, just be active. That's how that works. So pull this down. Again, just a little bit of nice separation in between the knuckles. Pull this back just a little bit into the hand. And next faces, extrude. Oh, that looks terrible. What'd you do, Zach? It's fine. We'll just pull that out manually and do just the same job. Scale down. Looks pretty good. Go back to vertices. We'll slide these back a little bit. Clean these up by pushing them inward toward one another. Slide down. This doesn't need to be too terribly pronounced. Take the one in between and slide that in. Close those up. And there we go. So yeah, we have fingers along with knuckles. Incidentally, we also are about an hour into the class, so I think it's a pretty good time to take a break for those who need to catch up or get up to speed a little bit. You've got some time to do that now. So what we're going to do is end this video. We'll take about a 10-minute break, and then we will continue.